I thought I had it all. A stable job, a loving family, and a future that seemed set in stone. But nothing lasts forever. And I guess I should have known, because that's when it hit me. The day my world came crashing down, when I found out my sister, the one person I trusted above anyone else, had been plotting against me. I had always thought Lily was my rock, the person who'd always have my back. After all, we were family, right? But in one moment, everything changed. I was at home, scrolling through some work emails, when a strange notification flashed on my phone. It wasn't from work. It was a transaction alert. And when I opened it, the numbers, my account balance, didn't make sense. I felt my heart drop into my stomach as the realization hit me. A transfer. A large one. From my account. And the name on the transfer? Lily. I froze. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the screen, replaying the details over and over. This couldn't be right. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I hadn't seen it correctly, but I knew deep down it wasn't a mistake. I called her right away, my fingers trembling as I dialed the number. The phone rang, and I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. She answered, her voice calm, almost too calm. "Hey, what's up?" she said, sounding so casual, like nothing was wrong. "Lily, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. "What's going on with the transfer from my account?" There was a pause on the other end. "What transfer?" she asked, her voice still unbothered. "Don't play dumb," I snapped. "The transfer to your account. The one for..." I looked at the number again. $10,000. I could hear the faintest breath on the other end of the line before she spoke again. "Oh, that! I needed it!" I was speechless for a moment, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was hearing. "You needed it?" I repeated. "Are you serious, Lily?" "That's my money!" "I don't have time for this," she said, her voice turning sharp. "I needed the money to cover some things. It's not a big deal." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. I was already so angry, but I didn't want to lose control. "You stole from me. You took from me without asking, without even telling me." "Look," she said, her tone suddenly dismissive. "You have plenty. It's not like you're going to miss it. It's just business. I didn't think you'd make a big deal out of it." "Business?" I almost spat the word. "This isn't business, Lily. This is betrayal." "I trusted you." There was another long pause. I could hear the sounds of her shifting around on the other end, like she was making herself comfortable, maybe trying to figure out how to spin this. "You don't get it," she said finally, almost too calmly. "I've been stuck in your shadow for so long. You've always had everything handed to you. I had to do something for myself. I couldn't keep being second place." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. "So you thought taking from me was the answer? You thought this was okay?" My voice cracked slightly, and I hated how weak it sounded. "You're my sister, Lily. You were supposed to be the one I could count on." "Yeah, well, I'm not gonna be that person anymore," she snapped. "I did what I had to do. You can't expect me to just keep waiting around while you take everything for yourself." "I don't believe this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't even know who you are anymore." I could hear her sigh, like she was tired of the conversation. "Listen, I didn't want to hurt you, but this is the way things are now. If you're going to keep whining about it, fine, but I'm not giving it back. I don't owe you anything." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. And then, as I sat there in that deafening silence, the cold realization settled over me. My sister, the person I trusted most in the world, had just ripped everything apart for her own gain. "I can't believe this," I said, barely able to hold it together. "Goodbye, Lily," I ended the call. The room spun around me, the weight of her betrayal sinking deeper and deeper. My chest tightened, and for a moment I thought I might just crumble right there. But I couldn't. I wouldn't let her destroy me. I sat there for what felt like hours, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. Lily had always been the one I thought I could trust, the one who'd never let me down. And now she was just another liar, another manipulator. I had been blind to it all. Later that evening, I paced around my apartment, my mind running at 1,000,000 miles per hour. I kept thinking back to the conversation, to her coldness, her complete lack of remorse. She didn't care. Not at all. I was devastated, heartbroken. I wanted to scream, to do something. But what good would that do? It was already done. And I realized, the person who had trusted her, that person was gone. The phone buzzed on my table. "Another message from her? I'm sorry. I don't know how else to fix this." I stared at it, my hand trembling. I almost wanted to respond, to say something, anything that might make me feel better. But I couldn't. I wasn't going to beg for an explanation that would never come. I put the phone down, and in that moment I knew. The sister I had once trusted was gone. And so was the man I had been. I was alone now. And I had no idea how I would rebuild from this, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to stay broken. The days that followed the confrontation with Lily were a blur. I couldn't focus, couldn't think clearly. Every time I closed my eyes, her face was there, sneering at me, telling me it was just business. She had stolen from me, betrayed me, and I didn't know how to process it. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. I didn't want to go to work, but I forced myself. I showed up every day, only to sit at my desk and stare at the screen. I didn't know how to focus. I didn't know how to do anything anymore. The emails piled up. The meetings came and went, but my presence felt like a ghost. The more I tried to work, the more I felt the world around me slipping away. At home, it was worse. The apartment that used to feel like a sanctuary now felt like a tomb. Every corner reminded me of her, the way she'd sit on the couch, how she'd laugh when we watched shows together. It wasn't just the betrayal that haunted me. It was the loss of the relationship we once had. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape her. I wanted to scream, but even that felt useless. I wasn't angry anymore. I was numb. The nights were the hardest. I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything, but I couldn't. I just kept thinking, how did I let this happen? That night, the loneliness was crushing. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, pulling me from my spiral. A text from work. I didn't care. A few more from friends. I ignored them. And then, one from Lily. We need to talk. I'm sorry. Please call me. I stared at the message, my heart sinking further. The temptation to respond was there, but I knew what that would mean. She'd only try to manipulate me again. I couldn't let her. Not again. I turned off the phone and rolled over, closing my eyes, hoping for sleep. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. I couldn't stop thinking about how everything had changed in the span of a single conversation. I had trusted her with everything, and now everything was gone. The next morning, I woke up in my old apartment, the one I had moved out of months ago. I blinked a few times, disoriented. This wasn't right. I couldn't make sense of it. I sat up quickly, glancing around. The furniture, the walls, they were all the same as I remembered. The feeling in the air was lighter, almost like nothing had happened yet. No betrayal, no anger, no heartbreak. I rubbed my eyes, trying to make sense of it. Had I fallen asleep here? Was this a dream? I got out of bed and walked through the apartment, everything looking fresh and untouched. It felt like a second chance. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a dream. I looked down at my phone, checking the time. It was the same day I had woken up before everything had gone wrong. I couldn't believe it. How was this even possible? Was this fate? Or was it some cruel twist? But instead of panicking, I felt something different. A sense of clarity. The weight of what I had been through, the pain of betrayal, it wasn't here. It hadn't happened yet. I had a chance to make things right. A chance to change my future. I spent the next few hours in a daze, trying to process what had happened. I couldn't stop thinking about Lily, but I knew that I couldn't let her or the past control me. I had the knowledge of everything that would happen, everything she would do, and this time, I wouldn't let it destroy me. I looked at the calendar on my phone. The date was a few months ago, before I had fallen into despair. I wasn't going to waste this chance. The first thing I did was go to work. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I needed to take control. I walked into the office and everything felt different. No one knew what had happened yet. No one knew how badly I had fallen. But I did. I knew I wasn't that person anymore. "Morning," Mark said as I passed by his desk, looking up from his computer. "You all right?" "You've been a ghost lately," I smiled faintly. "Just been busy, that's all." I didn't stop to chat. I couldn't afford to waste time. I headed straight to my desk, sat down, and opened my laptop. I didn't even look at the emails yet. I started planning. The same work that had once felt like an impossible burden now felt like a battle I was ready to win. I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to rise again. I had to outsmart everyone who had ever doubted me. But more importantly, I had to take back control of my life. Days passed. and I threw myself into work. I wasn't the same person I was before. I wasn't weak. I wasn't consumed by the betrayal anymore. I had a goal now. And that goal wasn't just to get back at Lily. It was to rebuild my life, stronger than before. Every step I took felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Every small victory brought me closer to the person I needed to be. I knew that I was going to have to confront Lily again eventually. But for now, I focused on what I could control. The work, the future. I wasn't going to let the past dictate my life anymore. One afternoon, a message popped up on my screen. It was from Lily. "We need to talk." I stared at the message, a strange calm coming over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was in control. I typed a simple reply. "We're done. Don't contact me again." I hit send and closed the phone. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long was finally gone. She no longer had power over me. I was free. That night, I walked into my apartment, the one that now felt like home. I looked around, taking it all in. It wasn't just the apartment that was different. It was me. I had come so far in such a short time, and I wasn't going to stop. I was going to be the man I had always meant to be. Strong, in control, and no one, not Lily, not anyone, was going to take that from me again. It's strange how quickly a shift can happen. I went from being a broken man, drowning in my own sorrow, to someone who could finally see a future ahead. It wasn't an instant thing. It was more like something clicked. Like a switch I hadn't realized existed was flipped. I remember sitting at my desk, looking at my computer screen, my hands hovering over the keyboard. There was nothing to distract me anymore. The emails that used to be overwhelming, the endless piles of work that felt like weights on my shoulders, now seemed manageable. I was no longer going to be the guy who drowned in stress, no longer the man who let everything slide because I was too heartbroken to function. I was going to rise. I rolled my shoulders and straightened up, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. I had a plan now. I knew what I wanted, and I was no longer going to sit around and wait for it to fall into my lap. If I wanted success, I was going to have to work for it. No more self-pity. No more wallowing in my past mistakes or what Lily had done to me. "Hey, you're looking better," Mark said, walking by my desk with a slight smile. His tone was warm, but I could tell he was treading lightly. He had been one of the few who'd noticed how much I'd been struggling. "Yeah," I said, meeting his gaze, a genuine smile tugging at my lips for the first time in ages. "Just needed to get my head back in the game." He nodded, clearly relieved. "Good to hear. We've been worried about you." "I'm fine now," I said, my voice firm. "I'm focusing on the future. No more distractions." I threw myself into my work like never before. I didn't just want to get by anymore. I wanted to excel. I wanted to show everyone that the man who had been weak, the one who let his life fall apart, was gone. The new version of me was focused, determined, and hungry for success, and slowly the changes started to show. I was more efficient, more precise. I started taking on bigger projects, leading meetings, and offering solutions. It wasn't easy. It never was. But I pushed through it. Every time I felt the pull to look back, every time the memories of Lily crept into my mind, I shoved them aside. I had no time for that anymore. A few weeks later, my manager called me into his office. "Sit down, I need to talk to you," he said, his face serious. I sat, my heart skipping a beat. Was this it? Had I messed up? He looked at me for a moment, clearly sizing me up. "You've been doing great work lately. I've been watching you closely, and it's not gone unnoticed. You've got potential, a lot of it." I nodded, trying not to let the surprise show on my face. This wasn't the conversation I'd been expecting. "We've got an opening coming up for a management position. I'd like to put you forward for it. I think you're ready for more responsibility." I couldn't believe it. All the hard work, the long nights, the self-doubt I'd fought through, it was paying off. "Thank you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I won't let you down." "I don't think you will," he replied with a smile. "Keep this up and you'll go far." After that conversation, I could feel the shift in the air. People were starting to notice me. They were starting to respect me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I deserved it. I wasn't just the guy who had lost everything. I wasn't the victim of betrayal anymore. I was someone they could count on. I saw Richard in the hall one day. He had been part of the company when I started, but I hadn't paid much attention to him before. Now his eyes met mine, and I could see the recognition in them. He didn't know what to make of me anymore. "Hey, my name," he said, flashing a quick, tight smile. "Looking sharp." I gave him a nod, but I didn't stop walking. He was trying to reassert some control, I could tell. But I wasn't the same person I had been before. I didn't need his approval, and I wasn't going to play along anymore. At home, things had changed too. I'd stopped looking for Lily's calls, stopped checking my phone for her messages. She had tried to reach out, but I had no intention of responding. There was no going back to what we had before, and I knew that now. She had shown me who she was, and I was better off without her. But as I sat there staring at my phone that night, I realized something else. The anger I had felt wasn't there anymore. The betrayal, the hurt, it was still there, but it no longer held any power over me. I had moved past it. It was like I had been reborn. Not just in my career, but in my soul. A few weeks passed, and the changes were undeniable. I was promoted to a management position, just like my manager had said. And with that came more responsibility, more decisions, more power. The path ahead was clearer now. I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to keep pushing forward. Keep proving that I could succeed, not just for me, but for the person I had once been. The one who had been broken by betrayal. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized the person I had been was gone. The man who had let Lily's betrayal consume him had no place in my life anymore. I had let go of him. I had let go of her. I wasn't the same person I had been a few months ago. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. It wasn't easy, but I learned to trust again, myself. The climb wasn't over, but I was ready for it. And no matter what happened, no matter how hard it got, I was going to make sure I reached the top. I had the power now, and nothing, not even Lily's ghost, would ever take that from me again. I could feel the shift. The atmosphere at work had changed, and I knew it wasn't just in my head. People were noticing me now. They respected me. At first it was subtle, an acknowledgement in the hallway, a more genuine tone in meetings, but it was there. I had earned it, and with that respect came power. Not the kind of power you flaunt, but the kind that people notice when they start looking up to you. They knew I wasn't the same guy who had been crushed under Lily's betrayal, and that's when I started to realize that everything was changing, not just at work, but in my life. I had control now, but Lily, of course Lily, could feel that power shift too. She wasn't ready to let go. It had been weeks since our last conversation, and I thought that maybe she'd finally given up. I had moved on after all. But just as quickly as I'd closed that door, she tried to open it again. I had been in the middle of a presentation when my phone buzzed. I saw her name on the screen. Lily. I stared at it for a moment, my chest tightening at the sight. But I didn't hesitate this time. I answered, "Hello?" "Hi." Her voice was soft, almost fragile. "I know it's been a while, but I need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, keeping my tone steady, though I could feel the old anger threatening to bubble up. "What is it, Lily?" I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice faltering. "I know I messed up. I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far, but I was scared. I didn't know how else to fix things." I could hear the guilt in her voice, the same rehearsed tone she had used 1,000 times before. But it didn't affect me the way it once had. The guilt, the sadness, the remorse, none of it felt real. Not anymore. "You've hurt me enough," I said, keeping my voice calm, though inside I felt the old bitterness stirring. "You made your choice, Lily, and I've made mine." "No, wait, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I know I can't fix everything, but I need to try. I'm not asking for things to go back to how they were. I just need a chance to show you I can be better. I'm not the person I was before." "I don't need you to be better," I said, cutting her off. "I need you to accept that I've moved on." There was a pause, and I could feel the weight of her silence. "So this is it?" she asked quietly. "You're really done with me?" "Yes," I answered firmly. "I'm done, Lily, don't call me again." I hung up without another word. The finality of it settled over me like a weight lifting off my shoulders. It felt strange, but it also felt freeing. She was no longer a part of my life, and I had taken back that control, that space she had once occupied. But there was still something lurking in the back of my mind. Richard. He had been one of the people I had trusted at work. Someone I thought I could rely on. But now I was seeing him for who he really was. His passive-aggressive comments, his subtle attempts to undermine me, they had all become clearer now. Richard had never really been my ally. He had always seen me as a stepping stone, someone to use for his own gain. And now that I was rising through the ranks, he wasn't about to let me do it without a fight. It started with small things, comments made behind my back, trying to sabotage my presentations, taking credit for work that was mine. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Maybe I was overthinking it, maybe it was just office politics. But when I overheard him in the break room talking to a colleague about my latest project, I knew I wasn't wrong. I don't think my name has what it takes to finish this. He's got the ideas, sure, but he doesn't know how to bring them to life. We'll see how this plays out, Richard had said, his voice dripping with condescension. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. He was threatened. He knew I was better than him, and he was scared. That night, I stayed late at the office, going over every detail of the project I'd been working on. I wasn't going to let him sabotage me. I had already been underestimated once. That wasn't going to happen again. The next morning, I was prepared. I didn't just want to prove my worth, I was going to expose Richard for what he really was. I walked into the meeting room where the team was gathered, and Richard gave me a quick, tense nod. He was already trying to assert dominance with his usual smirk, but this time, I wasn't buying it. "Let's get started," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. I laid out my plan, detailing every step with precision. I could see the surprise in Richard's eyes when I started to point out the flaws in his approach. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone he considered below him. "You see," I said, locking eyes with him, "the numbers don't add up in your proposal. I've already gone over it with the team. We need a more efficient approach." Richard's face reddened, but he couldn't argue with the facts. The team started to nod in agreement, and I could feel the power shifting in the room. This wasn't just about winning a project, it was about winning respect. It was about taking control of my career and finally stepping into the role I deserved. By the time the meeting ended, I knew I had won. Richard's facade had crumbled, and I was the one standing tall. The power shift was happening, and I was in control now. No one was going to stop me. Not Lily, not Richard, not anyone. Later that day, I bumped into Richard in the hallway. His posture was stiff, his eyes narrowed. He knew the game was up. "You think you've won, don't you?" he sneered. "I don't need to think," I said, my voice calm. "I already have." His face twisted in frustration, but I didn't care anymore. I was no longer the person who let people walk over him. I wasn't the person who felt small because of others' manipulation. I was someone stronger, someone who understood his worth. As Richard walked away, I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. The power shift was complete, and I was just getting started. The phone buzzed on my desk. I glanced down at it, immediately recognizing the name that made my stomach churn. Lily. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, and part of me had hoped that she would fade from my life. But deep down, I knew she would reach out again. She couldn't help herself. I hesitated, then swiped to answer. "Hello?" My voice was cold, deliberately distant. I know I haven't been the best sister," she said, her voice sounding tired, fragile. "But I need you to listen." I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. "Lily, what do you want?" I've lost everything," she whispered, and I could almost hear the tears in her voice. Richard's turned on me. "He's using me." I thought he was the answer, but now everything's falling apart. My jaw tightened. The manipulation was so obvious, it was almost laughable. She was trying to play the victim again, after everything she'd done to me. She thought I was still the same fool who trusted her. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice growing more impatient. "You had your chance, Lily. I've already moved on. I don't need your apologies." "Please, She cut off, and I could hear her sniffling, but I didn't feel the familiar tug of sympathy anymore. "I don't know what to do. I've messed everything up. You're the only one who can help me." "No," I said, cutting her off, my voice firm. "You don't get to come back after what you did. I've already forgiven you in my own way, but that's where it ends. But Her voice cracked again, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her back into my life. Not after everything. "Please," she pleaded one last time, but I had already heard enough. "Goodbye, Lily," I said, the finality in my tone unmistakable. "Don't contact me again." I hung up without waiting for her response. I wasn't angry anymore, just exhausted. Her voice didn't bother me like it used to, didn't sting. I had finally broken free of whatever hold she had on me. I sat back in my chair and stared at the phone, the weight of the decision settling over me. I had made the right choice. She was no longer my responsibility. As the days went on, I focused on my work. I had no room for distractions, no space for regrets. I was climbing, slowly but steadily. I could see it now. The company was mine for the taking, but there was still Richard. I had been keeping track of his movements, watching his subtle attempts to sabotage my progress. He was growing desperate. He knew I was a threat, and he was scared. That morning, I received an email from him. I opened it without hesitation, knowing it would be filled with his usual condescending tone. It was an invitation to meet, but the message itself reeked of manipulation, trying to set me up for failure while making himself look like the good guy. I wasn't going to play into his games anymore. I showed up at the meeting with everything I needed: facts, numbers, and proof of what he had been doing behind my back. He greeted me with his usual fake smile, but I could see the flicker of discomfort in his eyes when I didn't immediately take a seat. "You wanted to talk?" I asked, my voice smooth. Richard raised an eyebrow, trying to maintain control. "Yeah, I just wanted to go over some of your recent projects," he said, leaning back in his chair like he was in charge. "I don't think you understand the situation." "Richard," I said, cutting straight to the point, "you've been playing dirty. Trying to take credit for work I did, making backdoor deals, manipulating the board. I have the proof." His face tightened as I placed the file on the table between us, the documents clearly outlining his attempts to undermine me. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is over," I continued. "You've been exposed. You don't control anything anymore." Richard's face turned red, but he kept his cool, though I could see the panic beneath the surface. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, his voice rising. "You think you can just walk in here and—" "I think you've already been caught," I interrupted. "And now, the people who matter know the truth." I didn't need to say anything else. The silence that followed was enough to show him he was cornered. He had no way out. His empire of manipulation had crumbled. "I'm taking control of this company," I said, standing up and gathering the papers. "You can leave quietly, or I can make it harder for you. Your choice." For a moment, Richard just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't find the words. But there was nothing left to say. He knew he had lost. "I've been trying to protect what I've built," he said quietly, his voice almost pleading. "You've built nothing but lies," I said, my voice steady, "and it's all coming down now." I walked out of the office without looking back, the sound of Richard's frustrated shouts echoing in the background. The next day, the announcement was made. Richard was out. The board had unanimously agreed to remove him based on the evidence I had presented. The position I had fought for, earned, was finally mine. The company was now in my hands. As I sat in the corner office staring out the window, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. A few months ago, I had been broken, drowning in the aftermath of betrayal. Now I was the one in control. I had rebuilt myself piece by piece from the man who had trusted too easily to the one who knew exactly how to wield power. I thought about Lily, about Richard. They were part of my past now, shadows of what had almost destroyed me. But I wasn't that man anymore. The future was mine, and no one was going to take it from me. I stood there, looking out of the office window, the city sprawling below. My empire, my future. The sense of power was no longer just an idea. It was my reality. But as much as I'd fought for this, as much as I'd clawed my way to the top, I knew there was one last thing to do. End this, once and for all. Lily was going to reach out again. I knew it. She couldn't help herself. But this time, I wasn't going to let her manipulate me. Not again. It came as no surprise when I saw her name flash on my phone. I stared at it for a few moments before answering, my tone controlled. "What do you want, Lily?" I asked, letting the frustration that had once been so raw settle into something more detached. I need to talk." Her voice trembled. I could tell she wasn't ready to give up. But the truth was I was done. She was no longer a part of my life. "Talk?" I repeated, leaning back in my chair. "What is there to talk about? You made your choice." "I'm done with you! Please, just hear me out," she said, her voice desperate. I could almost picture her sitting on the other side of the phone, trying to get the words out, trying to make me feel something. But I wasn't that man anymore. I know what I did was wrong, and I know I can't fix it. But everything's falling apart. Richard, he doesn't care about me. I cut her off. No, stop. I didn't want to hear it anymore. I don't care about your problems. You've lost your chance. You betrayed me, and you can't come back from that. You're really gonna turn your back on me? Her voice broke, and I could almost hear the tears in it. I don't know what to do anymore. I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. You don't have to do anything. You've already made your choice, and so have I. There was silence on the other end, but I didn't care. I had moved on. Goodbye, Lily, I said, ending the call before she could say anything more. I stood up, walking around the room as the weight of it all started to sink in. This was it. The last string of my past was finally severed. She was gone. No more manipulation. No more guilt. I had control now. The phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Lily, it was Richard. I stared at the screen, already knowing what this was about. He had been cornered, and now, in the final moments, he was trying to salvage what he had left. I picked up the phone. Richard. Look, we need to talk. Richard's voice was sharp, but there was something beneath it. A hint of fear I hadn't noticed before. It was strange to hear it from someone who had always been so confident, so smug. There's nothing to talk about, I said calmly, leaning against the desk. The game's over. You lost. He hesitated, then tried again. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is bigger than you think. You think you can just take control like that? Not think, Richard, I said, cutting him off. I already have. There was a long pause, and when he spoke again, it was almost like he was trying to buy time, to save face. You don't know what you're doing. You're making a mistake. No, I said, my voice steady. The mistake was yours. You've been lying, manipulating everyone for so long, you didn't even see it coming when I started using the same tactics on you. You're the one who's losing control, not me. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. What are you talking about? He asked, though he already knew. I've been collecting evidence, I said, my voice cold. Every little thing you've done to sabotage me. Every time you tried to take credit for my work. It's all documented. No, you don't, he started, panic creeping into his voice. I already have it all, I said, my hand gripping the phone tighter. And now I'm taking what's mine. You think you can just destroy everything I've built? You think you can— Yes, I interrupted. You've built nothing but lies, Richard. And I'm going to expose it all. He didn't respond at first, and I could almost hear the realization dawning on him. He knew I had him. You're really doing this, aren't you? He asked quietly, the arrogance gone from his voice. I am, I said, standing up straighter. And I'm taking over now. The company is mine. The meeting with the board later that day was a formality. The evidence I had presented about Richard's actions couldn't be ignored. It didn't take long for the decision to be made. Richard was out. And just like that, I had what was rightfully mine. The room felt different now. It felt like mine. I was in control, and nothing was going to stop me. As I walked out of the meeting, my heart still pounding from the adrenaline, I realized something. The man who had been betrayed, the man who had let his past destroy him, was gone. In his place was someone stronger. Someone who didn't need to rely on anyone else to succeed. I wasn't looking back anymore. Not at Lily, not at Richard. They were a part of my past, and I had already left them behind. I was the one in charge now. And nothing, not even the ghost of my old life, was going to stop me from claiming what was mine. It's strange how much can change in such a short time. Not long ago, I was the man who had everything taken from him. Now I sit in the corner office, my name on the door, the weight of it settling into my bones. This is what I worked for. This is what I've earned. The past feels like a distant memory. I remember the man I used to be, the one who let betrayal consume him, who let the pain of loss define him. But I'm not him anymore. That man is gone, and in his place is someone who understands the true meaning of control, not just over others, but over myself, over my future. I look out the window at the city below, the lights sparkling like stars, endless possibilities stretching out before me. For the first time, I can truly say I've made it, not by anyone's hand, but my own. The door behind me opens and I hear footsteps. I don't need to turn around to know who it is. I can feel the presence behind me, the tension in the air. Lily. I take a deep breath, keeping my back turned. She stands there awkwardly, unsure of how to start. Her voice breaks the silence. "I've been thinking," she begins, "about everything. I want to make things right." I don't flinch. I don't even turn around. "You should have thought about that before you stabbed me in the back," I say, my voice firm but calm. "I don't have time for this anymore." "She doesn't matter, I know," she says softly. I made a huge mistake. Please, I need you to understand. Things didn't go the way I thought they would. Richard, he promised me everything, but it's all falling apart. I thought I was doing what was best for me, for us, but I see now how wrong I was." Her words fall flat, as hollow as they always have been. I've heard this story too many times, and I've moved past it. "Lily," I say, turning slowly in my chair, "this isn't about you anymore. You've lost your chance." I look at her, really look at her, for the first time in months. The woman who once had such a strong hold over me is now just a shadow, a relic of my past, no longer relevant to my future. "I've moved on," I continue, my voice unwavering. "I'm not that person anymore. You don't get to come back into my life just because you made a mistake. I've already made my peace with it." Tears well up in her eyes, but I feel nothing. I've already buried that part of me, the part that used to care, the part that used to long for reconciliation. "I thought," she whispers, trailing off. "I thought if I said the right things, maybe you'd understand. Maybe you'd forgive me," I shake my head. "There's nothing to forgive. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." Lily's expression falters, and for a moment she just stands there, as if she's waiting for something to change, but it doesn't. It's over. "You're not the same person I remember," she says quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "I don't even recognize you anymore." "That's the point," I reply. "I'm not that person. And I never will be again." There's a long pause, and then she turns to leave. As she steps out, I feel nothing, no lingering bitterness, no anger. I've walked away from the past, and with each step, it becomes clearer. I'm free. A few days later, I'm sitting at my desk, going over some reports when I hear a knock at the door. I glance up, expecting one of the team members to come in, but instead it's Richard. I freeze for a moment, then motion for him to enter. He steps in, his face hard, his hands gripping the sides of his briefcase as if he's trying to hold on to something. His power, maybe, or his pride. "We need to talk," he says, his voice strained, barely concealing the anger underneath. "About what?" I ask, leaning back in my chair casually. I know exactly where this is going. He knows it too, but I'm not about to let him have the upper hand anymore. "I'm not gonna let you take everything from me," he spits out, his eyes narrowing. "You don't understand what you're doing." I take a deep breath, trying to control the calm that's settling inside me. "No, Richard, you don't understand. You've manipulated, lied, and stolen from people to get ahead, but you've been exposed. Everything you built on those lies, it's all crumbling now." He steps forward, his hand slamming down onto my desk. "You think you can just waltz in here and take control? You don't have the experience, the connections." "Actually," I interrupt, "I've got everything I need. The team's already on board. The board already voted." Richard's face pales as I continue. "You're done, Richard. You're out, and I'm in." He stares at me, his lips trembling with rage. But I don't flinch. "Not anymore. I've already made my moves," I add, standing up. "And I'm not going to stop until everything I've earned is mine." Richard's eyes flicker with a mixture of disbelief and desperation. "This isn't over," he sneers, but I can hear the uncertainty in his voice. "It is," I reply, my voice final. "It's over for you." He stumbles back, his face a mask of defeat. "You think you've won? You think this makes you better?" "I don't think," I say, walking toward the door to show him out. I know. As he leaves, I can almost feel the shift in the air, the shift in power. The company is now mine. And more importantly, my life is mine. I've taken control, not just of the company, but of my destiny. Later that night, I stand by the window, watching the lights of the city flicker in the distance. It's quiet now. No more manipulation. No more betrayal. The past is gone. I've walked away from the man I used to be, the broken one who let others control him. And I've become someone who will never be swayed again. I am in control. And nothing will stop me from claiming what's mine.